Has Trump betrayed the state of Israel? Well, at least according to the Israeli media and international outlets, that appears to be the situation. Hi, welcome to Straight Up, and I'm Danny Seaman, and we here on JNS Studios will answer that question and give you insights into what is really happening. Well then, what is it? Has Trump betrayed the state of Israel? Why are the media doing this? Well, it's hard to say whether or not that is true, but I do tend to listen to what the American ambassador to Israel has said, Mike Huckabee. I think he has a little understanding, a little better than most of the journalists do. And he not only denied that, he ridiculed those who are taking this kind of information. And if you look at it, you look at some of these headlines, they're quoting anonymous Gulf sources. What they're trying to do is frame the narrative. They're trying to create spins. They're trying to create an impression of a reality that's not only what is happening in fact. And by doing this, they're trying to create pressure by the public in Israel and certainly international pressure on both the United States, but especially on the Israeli government. So what has happened here? One of the things they were saying this week is that Trump is going to recognize a Palestinian state. Well, this came out on Saturday evening. When you're listening to this right now, a few days have passed. Has this actually happened? And this is not the first time. You may all remember well how back in the past, when they wanted to open a U.S. embassy here in Jerusalem, how the same outlets, same organizations, same intellectuals were all telling us that if the United States opens up an embassy, how horrible things are going to be. It'll be the road to war. There'll be uprisings throughout the Middle East in response to that. There's been several years have passed since that has happened. Mike Huckabee, which I just mentioned, is sitting as the American ambassador here in Jerusalem. Just this week, the United States State Department decided to shut down those elements of the embassy that were treating the so-called Palestinians. Nothing has happened. By the way, the media didn't really report with the same hysteria about that as they did about the possibility of making up stuff such as Trump recognizing a Palestinian state. These things didn't happen in the past. They're probably not going to happen in the future as well. We remember just a year ago how we were warned that if Israel attacks Hezbollah, or if Israel attacks Syria, or if Israel moves forces into Rafah, how things will become so totally out of control. Israel cannot afford to do these things. Well, all of those things had happened, and I'm sorry to say to all the chicken littles out there, the sky did not fall down. And unfortunately, the media operate too much as chicken littles than providing us with serious news. Even the most important news that occurred this week, the release of an Israeli soldier, Idan Alexander, who has an American citizenship, released by Hamas, even this was used here in Israel to make the government look weak, to make Netanyahu look as somebody who gave in to pressures. But this is an American event because he also carries American citizenship. And the fact of the matter is that Israel made no concessions this time. So why is the media opposed to a soldier, an Israeli hostage, being released? Well, you have to ask them those questions. It's not unusual. They consistently do this to weaken the resolve of the Israeli public. Why did the Hamas do this? Very much because there are Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip moving slowly and surely to disarm, dismantle, and eject the Hamas. And they're not stupid. They're looking for any excuse and any way to try to restrain Israel. Right now, they understand that they do not have the backing of Iran. They no longer have Hezbollah. They have the Houthis who have been restrained both by Israel and the United States. So they're very much on their own. So what are they doing now? They're using whatever political maneuvers they can. And in this case, because of the presence of President Trump in the Middle East, they're showing a gesture of goodwill. Well, we know what kind of goodwill terrorist organizations like the Hamas have. You cannot trust them. But if we can take advantage of this at the moment and make it easier for the state of Israel to release our hostages, anything goes. And talking about spins, there's another spin we've been hearing over the past few days about the United States or the American president receiving a gift from the Qataris, a new aircraft that will replace Air Force One. Well, I don't know if this is true or not, but I know that history shows us that when you have opponents, you should be very cautious of receiving gifts for them. Or as they say, in this case, beware of Qataris bearing gifts. Before moving on to my guest, who I will discuss with him these issues that I've just raised right now, I want to thank all of you who are following us and watching these videos of ours and are following me here on Straight Up. I notice that many of you comment. I'm very happy to have those comments. I read them all. I respond when there are good questions and genuine, honest questions being asked. Sometimes, as with our last production, I couldn't answer some of the questions. These are questions that many of us in Israel are raising regarding what has happened here in the past 19 months. But in addition to the honest and genuine followers of ours, there are a lot of trolls. And all I can say about that is that, listen, you have nothing better to do with your life. You want to troll us, fine. But at least try to be, first, a bit more genuine. Second, don't be so silly with your ridiculous questions. In my last podcast, for example, we discussed the fact that my guest was from the United States, and so did I move here to Israel over 50 years ago. And there were those who immediately jumped on this as it being some evidence that Israelis are not from this area. They also mentioned how Israelis can't do DNA tests. Well, those things are a lie. We can do DNA tests here. You need a court order, and not because they're trying to hide anything, but because these DNA tests have very sensitive information when regards to family. One of the things in the Jewish law is when it comes to the issue of bastards. These DNA tests can reveal family secrets that, according to Jewish law, are not things you want to have discussed. And talking about bastards, a lot of you people who make these kind of comments understand that very deeply, I'm sure. But I did a DNA test, and I found out, and I knew from my mother's side of the family that we are part of the Babylonian expulsion, and we lived in Babylonia, and then the areas that we know today as Iraq, Persia, and then finally Afghanistan. And over 100 years ago, my grandfather from Afghanistan returned to the land of Israel. But when I did the DNA test, we found out that our original DNA is from this area of Judea. The interesting thing is that I found on my father's side of the family that also we have in our DNA connection to Italy, to England, to Spain, to Holland, and to Germany. We all knew about the German part. We didn't know of the other places that are basically a roadmap of places that Jews were expelled from over history. But the interesting thing in that DNA test was that also on my father's side of the family, we come from here, from Judea. So you have to get used to that idea. Most of us are the Jews of the land of Israel. Originally, we are the native people of the land of Israel. But I also want to refer to some of the other nasty, despicable comments coming out from some of you losers out there. Listen, we've been through so much as the Jewish people over our history. It culminated in the Holocaust. But every few years, we had to encounter similar things, just as we did on October 7th. That is nothing new to us. You people don't really bother us. But especially after October 7th, there's a difference here with us. Because when we said never again, this is exactly what we meant. We will not be the helpless Jew of the past. Now, over my history as a professional working on behalf of the government of Israel, I would engage people in discussion. I would use arguments about what is happening here. After October 7th, we've learned that many of you have not changed. Your anti-Jewishness, your hatred of the Jewish people has surfaced, and we were not surprised by it. But I can tell you this thing. We do not give a damn anymore what you think about us or what you have to say about us. You can continue with your stupid little comments here or on other Jewish and Israeli influencers and on other websites. We do not give a flying what any of you have to say anymore. Get used to that. We are not the cowering Jews of the past. We are the Jews of the state of Israel. We're here to stay. Deal with it. With me today to answer these questions I raised earlier is Tal Ornan. Tal is a member of a IDF intelligence unit. I think that's all we'll say about that. He's also a member of a new public popular movement called Nikrahim LeDegel. I don't know what the exact translation of that would be, but he's very much involved in the public sphere. He's a panelist and a commentator on Israel Channel 14 and other Israeli stations, and he's here to address the major issues that we're dealing with today in Israel. So, Tal, what do you think? Has Trump betrayed Israel, left Israel? Is he going to surprise Israel? What do you have to say about the discussion here on both the right wing and the left wing?
Look, whenever I look at Trump's policies or whatever he does, I'm looking from top down. How does he looks at the U.S. interest? And it's always through the prism of the relationship between U.S. and China, and the amazing U.S. debt that keeps on growing, still keeps on growing in spite of everything that he does. I keep on looking at the U.S. debt clock just to get an idea of what's going on there, and it doesn't look good for the United States. And I derive from that a lot of a lot of thoughts about where is the United States towards other superpowers that are emerging, such as China. I've just bumped into David Psig, who is dealing with future. He's a futurist, and he says something very interesting that kind of amazed me, because I said something similar to that just yesterday in an interview without being a futurist, a professor, just a private autodidact person. He said that the West, and the US specifically, is going backwards in that process of industrialization and losing the game to China and the East. And what I said yesterday is that the United States, in spite of its being a superpower, looks like a superpower. What I see in the United States since 1979 is a process of decline. And I've been there first time when I was 13 years old in the 70s, and later worked there and studied there and worked with Americans from here, visiting the United States many, many times. I got family there, and for other reasons, such as business, being there. And that's what I see. Now, regarding our specific problems today, when it comes to Israel and the release of the Idan Alexander, first of all, we need to bless that there is, the fact that there is a hostage coming back to his family. That's on a very basic human, I would say, feel for us as Israelis, as Jews who are living here in Israel. Secondly, I don't see it as a betrayal. I certainly see Trump not being patient and basically jumping from right to the left, doing things, trying to, how would I say it? Trying basically to save American economy. You see, he's trying to get deals from the Emirates, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia. It all has to do with money. It has nothing to do with us.
Okay, so basically what you're saying here is that Trump is focused on the interests of the United States. Who would imagine that the president of the United States, first and foremost, with all his sympathy towards Israel, is interested in his own issues. And here we sort of have a problem with this in Israel. And as I mentioned earlier, that regardless if it's right wing or left wing, Israelis tend to forget that he's the president of the United States.
Yes, well, it's not a surprise that Trump is working for the American interest. And what Israel should do, if I was Prime Minister of Israel, is try to match my interest to the American interest as much as I can. But still, there are interests that are purposely Israeli interests. So, for example, if it's Israel's interest to keep on the war until we dismantle Hamas from its weaponry, from its ability to control the Gaza Strip, we have to do it, and it has nothing to do with American interest. This is our interest, to have no terrorist regime groups, whatever, between the Jordan and the Sea, and between South Lebanon and Syria to our border with Egypt. That's a pure Israeli interest, and we have to take care of that, no matter whoever says something about it. And when it comes to Trump, with his dealings with Qatar, well, I don't like his dealings with Qatar. There was just I remember, I forgot the name. I just read this morning somebody who said about him getting this plane from Qatar, that 747.
Air Force One for
that's
as a new Air Force One.
Another Air Force One from Qatar, that it's totally corrupt and shouldn't be doing that.
It's a Trojan. It's like a Trojan horse. I'd be very careful taking gifts from the Qataris.
Well, that's the policy of the Qatar all over the years. That's how they do things. Right. After all, they're a nation of 300,000 people with slaves around them and a lot of money. And that's the way they manage their policies, together with their TV station, Al Jazeera.
So I want to focus for a moment on the Israelis. On the one hand, you have these spins being created by the Israeli media. It seems like every day there's another issue that they're making a whole storm about. And then and trying to prove that Israel and its relationship with the United States is being harmed. And then on the right wing, there are those who are constantly being concerned that Trump is giving up on us. And where can we make, what would you say to Israelis on both sides regarding these kind of, I would say, gut reactions?
Well, when it comes from the left, from those guys who are protesting on a weekly basis in Kaplan or near the Habima Theater, look, they have a campaign every weekend when the right-wing media is going to sleep because most of them are traditional or religious, so they don't, the TV station for Channel 14 or other channels are not working throughout the Shabbat. So they have a constant campaign, it's systematic, it's being funded, and I stopped being, surprised with what they do between Friday night to Saturday night. And the Twitter is going crazy, and Facebook and whatever, all the social media. And by the time we get up at Saturday night or on Sunday morning, there's this whole issue you need to deal with. It's just a campaign. It's a political campaign, and I don't see any reason to even do something with it. About the right-wing people, or I wouldn't even call them right-wing people, just people with reason. We need to go on with our war campaign against Hamas, doing what we have to do. We shouldn't be hysterical about it. Yes, we have relationships with the United States. We need to keep them on the right track. That's doing policy. That's being a statement. To know how to deal with the American president, and know how to, as I said before, match your interest to the American interest as much as you can until that point where it contradicts. And when it contradicts, we need to stand firmly about our interests.
I agree with you on that. Do you think, it's much easier for Netanyahu under this current administration, but he proved even when there was a very I would say, opposing administration, he did show that he would do what he believed at that moment to be the Israeli interest. Do you think it's easier for him now, or because there's an expectation that we are allies with this administration, it's more difficult for him? Or is he in effect doing what any leader should do, the best interest of his own country?
I don't think it's harder for him with the Trump administration. It's pretty obvious that at least in terms of, for example, the embargo of second weaponry, that's gone. There are ideas raised by the Trump administration about what to do with Gaza that are pretty much matching Israel's interest. The only thing that came up as criticism is that Trump gave Netanyahu like a blank card to do whatever needs to be done, and he doesn't do it fast enough. We're living in our own country, and we know what sometimes stops the government from doing things. I'm not sure it's the ideal government as well. I mean, obviously there are things that I don't agree with either in terms of how they deal with things, or how efficient they are, or how good they are practically as people who need to perform. But I think that Netanyahu has a long history of dealing with the Obama administration and the Biden administration in very hard circumstances. And now, at least for him, it must be easier to deal with. And what I see about Netanyahu, and that's what kind of made me understand what his view were like and what he was doing since his first term in '96 and all over those years, is that I think that what he sees is a futuristic target of what Israel needs to get to. And that means whether it's demographically being stronger between the Jordan and the sea, not having any Palestinian state or any other political entity between the Jordan and the sea. There is a great opportunity now to finally deal with the problem in Gaza, which we do. It doesn't happen from one day to another. It takes time, and it has its difficulties. We're not alone in this world, but we need to do it. And that's what I think he sees. That's what I think he does. And even when you look at the economy, we keep on having all those news media stations, newspapers, reporters talking about Israel's economy is crashing and blah, 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 blah. It's not crashing at all.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Because of that, the strength of the economy, because for years they were talking about how Israel can't have an extensive war. Also because of the fact that the public wouldn't be behind it for such a long time. And back then we were talking about weeks up until a month or two. We're already 19 months in this war. And yet you had this week when there was a call up, you had over 100% of people of the reserves showing up for the call of duty. And also economically, yes, there is difficulties, but as you mentioned, our economy is very sound right now. So where do you think we're going with this, especially in light of the fact that you're involved, as I mentioned, in a public movement of Israelis, and this is a new movement that has been established following the war. Your connection, you're being exposed to Israelis around the country. What are you seeing about the feeling of Israelis right now? Are you optimistic?
Well, there are a lot of things that I want to relate to in your question. I want to relate, first of all, for the extension of the war. We still need to shorten it as fast and do it as fast as we can. I think that's going to be healthier for Israel's economy and for us all. And we can do it. The main problem that we couldn't do it so far was, first of all, policies of certain officers who thought that they're running the game instead of the government. And the other thing was the fact that they cut the army throughout those years, and we needed more forces. And that's a problem we need to address. Generally, yes, I am optimistic. I see Israel public all the time. I meet with people. We, by the way, Nikrahim LeDegel wasn't formed because of the war. It was formed before the war because we thought there was a red line being crossed here by those people who protested and said, well, you shouldn't come and serve in the army, whether in reserves or not. And that was a breaking of a red line. I wouldn't believe anybody will break ever in Israel, because Israel's security is first and foremost important. And then again, I would have wanted everything in Gaza to happen much faster. We have that problem with the hostages, which we all want to save. I said not many times, but few times, something that others considered as brave or as others considered as impossible to say, but I'm saying it. Israel cannot surrender to the Hamas strategically. And though we worry about the 21 alive hostages, and we all want them home. Right now, it might be already 20 because Idan Alexander might get released in an hour. We can't surrender to the Hamas demands. And there is a limbo here because it contradicts. Hamas will never release all the hostages. We'll never release all the hostages unless we surrender to its demands. And their demands is clear, control of Gaza, getting again funds and basically being there, and we are not willing to surrender to that anymore.
And you see that the public that you come into contact with share that, because I know certainly in the south of Israel, but you've met them in the Tel Aviv area and north of there. Do they share the same sentiments as the Israelis in the south?
Look, I think a lot of Israelis understand now that what used to be the reality in the South we cannot come back to that. People will not come back to their homes. People are afraid to come back to their homes. Though they do, they want the army to stay there within Gaza to make sure that security is kept. And you can't have security with 20, I don't know the exact number, but 15, 20, 25, 30,000 Hamas members, whether they're well-trained or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is that they're there. And we know they're not well-trained because they keep on recruiting people instead of those trained people that we kill. But that cannot happen. That should be over with.
Well, I agree with you on that, and I think that many of us understand, and that there's a huge dilemma that right now we're in the process of. And I remind people that With Lebanon, we did what was necessary and we took care of it, and we can take a step back right now and allow the Lebanese to conclude the situation there. Same thing with Syria to the degree, because those two situations did not have the hostages. And here in Gaza, they do hold this against us, knowing how our society reacts to that. How do you think we should, well, for future reference, how should we address this and make sure in a way that we're not in that kind of situation again?
The only way that I see to address it is to have a clear border, and a clear border is controlling Gaza, and maybe apply that immigration program of Trump.
Yes.
Because it's stuck like a pain in Israel's neck or Israel's other part of body, which I won't say in a broadcast, in the south of Israel, and we got to get rid of it. As simple as that. We cannot afford having that there. And by the way, what's happening in Lebanon, yes, that is right. We've heard voices in the Lebanese society that finally came out once they realized Hezbollah is being beaten and weaker. We're still not sure they will be able to achieve their goal, meaning have one weapon, one army, one state, as General Aoun is saying. But we certainly need to give it a chance, because if Lebanon can be stabilized without Hezbollah having a private army on the border of Israel, that's actually in Israel's interest. We don't have an interest to occupy all of Lebanon and half of Syria. We don't have the army to do that. We don't have the people to do that, and we don't need to do that. We cannot certainly fight 350 million Islamist radicals and kill them all. That's not possible. What we should do is keeping those strategic points where our army is staying right now, like the Hermon, for example, the top of the Hermon mountain, whatever, that areas in the Golan, in Syria, and those points in South Lebanon that are topographically above our settlements in Israel. Maybe we should at a certain point, occupy them forever. But we can let Lebanese decide their own futures, and if they don't, we are there to keep it safe. That's what we do
exactly.
right now.
That's sort of a change in the Israeli attitude, I would say, in the last, since Oslo, where now we understand that we're more than willing to let them control their areas, but should they not be able to do that, and as a consequence, our people suffer, no country in the world would allow that to happen. We're not going to do that either anymore.
Look, no country in the world would allow anything to happen that we allowed for years.
Right.
And I'm not willing as an Israeli to get criticism, no way, neither from any other country that is keep on criticizing us for being whatever, apartheid state or occupation entity or whatever they call it. I don't know. I don't give a damn. First of all, I'm an Israeli, I'm a Jew, and Jews came from Judea. We know very well where Judea is. Judea and Samaria, both Israel's kingdom, whether Judea and Israel after they split. And that's one thing. So that's our basic identity. We are the people of the land. And that should be clear. We are the people of the land.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing. That's a very basic thing that should be translated or explained to anybody who is speaking about us or talking to us. And another thing, I've just had a very interesting interview I've done with Noga Arbel, and it had to do with Natasha Hausdorff appearing in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the British Parliament, something like that. I hope I'm exact about the name of the committee. And she actually proved how in the international law, she's an expert on international law, and she proved that how in the past, every area in the world that was under a certain mandate, and then there were a country or a state that inherited the mandate, they inherited the borders of the mandate. And it's only Israel who other countries are claiming that we are not entitled to inherit the borders of the British mandate and need to establish a Palestinian state, blah, 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 blah. No, we are not. And it's under international law.
Tal Ornan, thank you very much for being with us today, former IDF intelligence unit member and a member of Nikrahim LeDegel, an Israeli popular movement that I wish you success with. Thank you for being and sharing your knowledge with us here. Toda rabba.
Thank you very much, Danny.
And I want to thank our viewers today for watching us here on Straight Up. I'm Daniel Seaman. Thank you for being with us, and we'll continue providing you with insights into Israeli society.